Hi, I'm Zach. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to adjust training volume for sprinting, jumping, and lifting to keep athletes from overtraining and get them extremely fast to jump higher and also to lift heavier. You started here at a 7.860 in high school, and tell us about it.
That's right. I was my junior year in high school, the slowest kid in the team. I ran a 7.860. In my senior year, I worked out with you, Zach, and my freshman year at Lehigh, I recorded a 6.760, fastest guy in the team.
So the biggest problem with our industry is I see athletes all the time coming to me or going to me that they're going to be in a D1 program. I get them extremely fast, I get them stronger, I get them less prone to injury. Then they go to these Division I programs, and what happens is, or even D3, it's all the same, it's all tied in together, but what happens is they go and train there for 2 or 3 years, they come back, they're slower, they're tighter, and they're more prone to injury. And really it all comes down to that the training volume isn't adjusted correctly. They're running them into the ground, they're lifting them way too heavy, and they're not even doing enough plyos in order to really increase their jumping abilities and their speed abilities. So in today's episode, we're going to now take you into my office here, and we're going to go on a computer screen. I'm going to show you how to adjust all training volumes throughout the year and the system that I use in order to get results. All right, the first thing I want to address here is training volume within a given week, okay, and how to keep from overtraining, and how many days off you need per week, and how many days on a training you need per week. So this is a 4-time-a-week program, and this is a 2-time-per-week training program. This is for my general athletes here. So this is for athletes that have an off season, like your baseball, your softball, your football. Those athletes will have 3 or 4 months out of the year. If they're in high school, they'll have 3 or 4 months out of the year where they can train and they don't have to practice. Same with track athletes here. So this is our 4-time-a-week schedule for them. Over here, this is for a 2-time-per-week training program, also with practices or games 2 or 3 days per week. And this is your basketball, this is your volleyball, this is your field hockey. They never really have an off season. Also soccer and tennis could apply to that. But they're constantly practicing, and so you have to adjust the training volume accordingly based on those sports if you want to stay in business and not overtrain them. Okay, so we're going to just focus on this, and then we're going to go into this a little bit later. But first, let's just focus on a 4-time-per-week program. So keep in mind that every athlete that comes in here, we're always jumping, sprinting, and lower body lifting. I'm not going to take out jumps and sprints and just lift. I don't do that for any of my phases. I always incorporate this in, because what you have to realize, just like lifting is a skill to get stronger, jumping and sprinting is a skill to get faster. And that skill, you have to do repetitive motions over time, and that's what's going to lead to better gains in speed and better gains in also jumping ability. So we're constantly building these in to one unit in order to get the results. Okay, so in a 4-day-a-week program, what we do is we have 2 days on, so we're going to lift heavy, sprint, jump. Then we're doing upper heavy here with also conditioning, medium, high. We're going to go over this conditioning up top. So we do 2 days on, then we have 1 day off. Then we do another 2 days on here. We jump, we sprint, and look, the lifting is a lot lighter here. This is heavier, this is lighter. And then we have upper speed where they're lifting fast with their upper body, with bench and with some other lifts. This just takes some pressure off the shoulder and off the chest, allows them to recover. And then we have conditioning here, medium. So this is a little higher level conditioning. This is medium. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they have off. 2 days off, 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on. And if they're track, we do some light conditioning with them on a Sunday. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to break down the jumps and sprints. I'm going to show you basically the style of jumps that we do so you don't overtrain, and also the sprinting yardages that you do so you don't overtrain, and just have a better understanding of that. All right, so first let's look at jumps. So generally with jumps, I'm always going to do a mid-level jump of taxation and a high-level jump. When I say taxation, I mean hard on the nervous system. It's going to take longer to recover from. So I consider a box jump, Barbell jumps, so you have the barbell on your back, you're jumping up and down. Broad jumps, all would be mid-level taxation. Depth jumps, single leg jumps, hurdle rebounds. Anytime you're having to rebound and really change direction, your ground contact times are going to be at your highest. And if they're super high, it's going to be more taxing on the nervous system. So that's why this is high and this is mid here. So speed work is generally going to be from 10 to 60 yards. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60s. Those are the yardages that you're generally going to run if you're trying to make somebody fast. 10 yards is the lowest taxation on the nervous system. Why? Because it's acceleration. You never get going that fast. Same with a 20. It's low. You're going into acceleration, then you get a little bit faster, but you never reach top speed. 30 is going to be mid. You're getting more to your top speed by the end of the sprint. 40, you're definitely at your higher speeds towards the end. 50s and 60s are going to be at your highest. So generally with athletes, why this is important is for most athletes, they don't need to run 40, 50s, or 60s. That's more for track. Most of your athletes are going to be running 10 to 30 yard increments. That's also going to be less taxing on the body. Now, if we go over here, flying. So if you want to work on top speed, I'll work on top speed with athletes sometimes, especially if you're trying to train somebody's 40. And if you don't want to tax them that much, I'll do flying 10. So you start back maybe 10 or 15 yards. You run in at like 85%, and then you go full out for 10 yards. Well, even though it's 10 yards, it's still as taxing as running a 20 because you are running full out for a shorter distance. So that would apply again to 15 yards, doing a fly-in like that at full speed. It's going to be about as taxing as a 30, and a fly-in 20 is going to be about as taxing as a 40. So when you're setting up a program and say you're doing 200 yards worth of volume, and I want to throw some of these in here, I'm going to mainly focus on 20s and 30s, and then I might do a couple of these at the end. That way they don't get too taxed out. If I did all flying 20s for the entire 200 yards, it's going to be much more taxing on the nervous system than 10s, 20s, and 30s. So just keep that in mind. Then when we have sled or hill, so if you're running up a hill or using a sled, even though you're running longer distances, it's not as taxing on the nervous system as a 20. It's more muscular endurance and muscular strength, but it's not as taxing on your nervous system as, say, running a 30 or 40, even though you're running 30 to 60 yards. So it's more muscular endurance, muscular strength, but not as taxing. And same with running a 20 yard, it's like running like a 10. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to break all these down and the training volume that I use per week and throughout the year. So let's go up and look at this chart. Before I show you the chart, I want you to understand that we always sprint and jump before we lift. Why? Because I want my athletes at the fastest they can be so they can train their nervous system to move fast. That's how you're going to get them faster. If you lift and then you go into sprint, well, guess what? They're going to be bogged down. They're not going to move as fast, so you're not training their nervous system at that high of a level. So why we jump, sprint, and lift all in the same day? Because it's the highest taxation on the body. You're training all the major stressors on one day. Then what happens is because it's so hard on the nervous system, as the athlete starts adapting and starts recovering from this, the super compensation is much greater, so they're able to reach to higher levels of speed and to strength. So that's why we train everything on one day, because the super compensation is ultimately what's going to lead the athlete to better gains on speed and better gains in jumping and lifting. So we're going to focus just on the track and the general athletes, and we'll go back to this, and then I'll also explain these over here. But let's just focus just on the general athletes, and let's just focus just on the lower body days where they're sprinting, jumping, and lifting. So for day one, like you just saw on that chart there, so this is where they're going to be doing heavy lifting, all right? So total contacts. So for their jumping right here, 30 to 40 contacts. So what does that mean? That means, let's say you pick a depth jump and you do 3 to 4 sets of 5, and you pick a box jump and you do 3 to 4 sets of 5. So that's 30 to 40 total contacts of either jumping up onto something or dropping down, hitting the ground, and reversing. Sprint volume. For the general athletes, 200 to 220 yards, and I'm going to mostly do that using 20s and 30s. And again, you can mix the hill in there and the sled, but we're just for simplicity purposes, we're just going to focus on just doing regular sprints. Then the last thing is your heavy lifting. with your deadlift and your squat. Those are the things, and then you obviously have your auxiliaries, and we have links at the end on other auxiliaries and setting up just general programs for the lower body, so you can check that out at the end of the video. But for right now, this is the most important thing, is a squat or deadlift, because that's going to be the most taxing on the system. The other auxiliaries aren't going to matter as much. So we use generally 77 to 82% throughout the entire year. And we only hit up 85%, 1 or 2 sets, 1 time per month. And this is all 3-week cycles. And on the 4th week of each cycle, we deload, and we usually lift around 65%. Before we show you the second of the chart, I want you to understand that 85%, if you're sprinting and jumping on top of lifting, and you're training at 85% week in, week out, that's basically doing 4 or 5 sets of 3. This is going to wear on the system. That's why if you're sprinting and jumping, we always keep the percentages around 77, 82, and only hit up, mainly on the 3rd week, we'll hit up a couple sets at 85%, and this way it doesn't bog them down and allows them to recover, and they're still going to get great strength results from that. Okay, so now we're looking at day 2 here, and on the second day of lower body, we're going to do the same thing. Look, 30 to 40 contacts and 200 to 220 yards of speed work. Difference is that we're going to mainly do 20s and 30s, but we might add in 40s, 50s, and 60s for baseball athletes. For whatever reason, they get tested on their 60s, so you got to be able to have them do those distances in order to prove their speed. So that's the only little adjustment I make with this here. The other change that I do is I do 50 to 60% of somebody's squat max or deadlift max, and I have them move it very fast with bands and chains, and we do up to 24 reps of that. So 8 sets of 3 or 12 sets of 2, and that's how we convert their strength over into speed. And that's how you're really going to get them a lot faster out on the track. And also, because it's improving your power output, it's also going to drive up your deadlift and your squat to a greater level than just doing regular slow motions on this day here. So I also want you to understand why we have a rest week. So what we do is we do 3 weeks of heavy lifting. So we'll do week 1, week 2, week 3, and then we do it like 85% on the 3rd week. And then when we get to the 4th week, what we do is we deload. So we drop the percentages down to 65%. And we also drop some of the lifting and jumping volume down. And that allows the athlete then to super compensate, recover, so when they go into their next 4-week block, their strength levels and their speed levels are going to improve. So if we look back on this 4-time-a-week chart here, we just showed you day 1 and day 2 here. And now what I'm going to show you is we're going to talk a little bit about conditioning, okay? So now we have our upper heavy here, so we're going to be lifting the same basically percentages, maybe a little bit more than you generally do with your lower body, because this isn't going to tax you that much. So with upper body, 80, 85%, you might do a couple more reps at 90 if you really want to. And we're going to do a conditioning at medium high. And then down here is where we do upper speed and we do conditioning medium. So let's take a look at those. So on this day 1 upper here, we're doing 75 to 80% effort speed around that, and 1,000 to 1,500 yards total. So that means we're going to do like 110 sprint repeats at 75 to 85% speed, and we're going to do 9 to 12, and maybe take like a minute and a half rest break in between each. You could also do like a 200-yard shuttle, something along those lines where you can really gas them out. And you just want to make sure that you're not going over this yardage here. As soon as you get into the 2,000 or 2,500, that's when you're going to start really affecting their ability to recover, and then their strength and their speed is going to get affected by that. And this is going to get them plenty in shape here. Then on that second day, at the end of the week, look at what we do. We adjust down the percentage here to 65 to 70%, and we keep it around 1,200 to 1,500. And also, I'd only like doing running 3 times per week. So the 4th day, I like taking the load off people. So I'll do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and you use your RPMs, like if you're on a bike or anything like that. And then I'll use a rower, a bike, or like a stair climber, something along those lines, and that way you don't overtax them. You let them recover a little bit, and this helps get the lactic acid out, but also gets them in shape at the same time. If you want a specific program designed for you with some of the other things that we had on that chart, for instance, if you want to do max effort lifting and lift at 90-95%, train more like a power lifter, we can design programs for you on that. Track, if you're a 100 to 400 meter sprinter, we can design programs for that. And also if you're trying to improve your jumping abilities and get to another level as far as your vertical goes, we also have programs designed for that. And all the training volume is adjusted quarterly so you don't overtrain and you get results.